The first time Michael Reyes saw Beechwood Lane, it looked like something out of a carefully curated magazine spread. Identical two-story homes lined the street, each with precisely trimmed lawns that seemed to have been groomed by military personnel rather than landscapers. Manicured hedges stood at attention, and flower beds bloomed with a uniformity that bordered on the supernatural. At 42, Michael was no stranger to precision. 15 years as a Level 1 trauma surgeon at Cook County Hospital had taught him that chaos could be contained, that order could be maintained even in the most catastrophic circumstances. He'd watched lives hang in the balance, sutured wounds that would make most people faint, and maintained a calm so steady it bordered on superhuman. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the suburban warfare that awaited him on Beechwood Lane. The move had been his therapist's idea. "You need to decompress," Dr. Eleanor Simmons had said during their last session, her steel-rimmed glasses reflecting the harsh hospital lights. 15 years of trauma surgery, 14-hour shifts, watching people die and come back to life. It's eating you alive, Michael. She wasn't wrong. The nightmares had become more frequent. The smell of antiseptic that once comforted him now made him feel trapped. His hands, once steady enough to perform miraculous surgeries, had started to develop a barely perceptible tremor. Beechwood Lane promised salvation. A quiet suburban neighborhood in the outskirts of Chicago, it looked like the kind of place where the most exciting event might be a neighborhood barbecue or a lost cat. The house was perfect, a sprawling colonial with just enough space for his growing collection of medical journals, and a backyard that could accommodate the one luxury he promised himself after years of grueling work: a top-of-the-line hot tub. The hot tub wasn't just a piece of equipment. It was therapy. Each evening, as the jets massaged away years of tension, Michael could feel the ghosts of emergency room memories slowly dissolving. The midnight blue exterior matched his mood, deep, complex, with hidden depths that most people couldn't see. What Michael didn't realize was that on Beechwood Lane, nothing, not a single blade of grass, not a single exterior paint choice, not even a hot tub, escaped the vigilant eye of the Homeowners Association. Elena Rodriguez had been waiting. At 55, Elena was a force of nature disguised as a suburban housewife. Her pastel blazers and perfectly coiffed hair concealed a personality forged in the cutthroat world of corporate law. She'd spent 20 years dismantling corporate negotiations, and now she applied those same ruthless tactics to managing Beechwood Lane. The HOA wasn't just an organization to Elena. It was her kingdom, and she was its unquestioned monarch. Michael's hot tub appeared on her radar within 48 hours of his move-in. From her perfectly positioned bay window, she could see everything: the midnight blue color, the slightly askew positioning, the potential, no, the absolute certainty of multiple violations. Her first communication came swiftly, not a friendly welcome basket, not a neighborly hello, but a certified letter, 7 pages long, single-spaced, detailing no fewer than 17 potential infractions. Michael opened the envelope, the crisp paper crackling with bureaucratic menace. His surgeon's eyes scanned the document, a habit developed from reading complex medical charts. Each point was more absurd than the last. Violation 1. Hot tub placement within 15 feet of property line. Subsection 7.3. Violation 2. Exterior color not approved by HOA color palette. Violation 3. Potential noise disturbance from hydrotherapy jets. Violation 4. Insufficient screening of mechanical equipment. He couldn't help but laugh. A laugh that started low in his chest, the same laugh he used to calm terrified patients on their worst days. This wasn't a letter. This was a declaration of war. Beechwood Lane had no idea what was coming. The coffee shop was a temple of suburban professional networking. All exposed brick, artisanal pour-overs, and conversations laden with passive-aggressive undertones. Jason Martinez looked like he'd stepped out of a GQ photoshoot, his tailored charcoal suit speaking of success long before he opened his mouth. Michael spread the HOA documents across the reclaimed wood table, each page a battlefield map of bureaucratic warfare. Jason's eyes, sharp as surgical instruments, devoured the details. 17 violations, Michael said, his voice a low rumble that had talked countless patients through life-altering diagnosis. 17 ways they think they can control my property. Jason's laugh was short, sharp, the sound of a predator recognizing a worthy hunt. "They've given us a gift," he said, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on the document. "Every single one of these violations is a potential legal liability for the HOA." Michael had chosen Jason carefully. They'd met during a charity golf tournament, where Jason's reputation preceded him. Known as the neighborhood nightmare among local HOA boards, Jason Martinez specialized in property rights cases that made municipal lawyers tremble. His firm had dismantled more HOA restrictions than any other lawyer in the greater Chicago area. "Tell me about Elena Rodriguez," Jason demanded, pulling out a leather-bound notebook. Every detail mattered. Michael obliged, reconstructing the intelligence he gathered. Elena wasn't just an HOA president. She was a woman with a mission. A former corporate lawyer who traded courtroom battles for suburban governance. She ran Beechwood Lane like a meticulously managed portfolio. "Her husband's an interesting angle," Michael continued. He pulled out his phone, revealing discreetly taken photographs. Richard Rodriguez worked for a major pharmaceutical company, with a career built on navigating complex regulatory landscapes. But beneath the corporate veneer, rumors swirled. Jason's eyes narrowed. "How did you get these?" "I'm a surgeon," Michael said with a slight smile. "Gathering information is what I do. Before I cut, I understand everything about what I'm facing." The photographs told a story. Richard Rodriguez had multiple corporate complaints, allegations of data manipulation, ethical breaches narrowly avoided through legal maneuvering. Elena's obsessive control of the HOA seemed to mirror her husband's professional survival tactics. "We're not just fighting a hot tub restriction," Jason muttered, more to himself than to Michael. "We're fighting a system." Their strategy began to take shape. They would not just defend, they would expose. Every HOA regulation would be scrutinized. Every Rodriguez family movement would be documented. Sarah Thompson, the retired schoolteacher who served as the neighborhood's informal intelligence network, became their unexpected ally. Over the next few weeks, information began to flow. Elena's own property had inconsistencies, landscaping that exceeded approved heights, fence measurements that didn't match official specifications, exterior paint shades that deviated from the approved palette. "She's been running this neighborhood like a personal fiefdom," Sarah confided during one of their clandestine meetings. Her living room, filled with decades of meticulously maintained photo albums and local history, felt like a command center. Michael understood institutional control. In the emergency room, he'd seen how systems could crush individual humanity. This was no different, just with manicured lawns instead of sterile hospital corridors. Jason began preparing their counteroffensive. Each document was a weapon, each regulation a potential point of attack. They would transform Elena's bureaucratic weapon into her own undoing. "This isn't just about a hot tub anymore," Jason said, spreading documents across the table. "This is about personal freedom, about the right to exist in your own space without petty tyranny." Michael looked at the documents, each page a battle map, each paragraph a potential breakthrough. The surgeon in him recognized this for what it was, a complex operation. Precision would be key. One wrong move could compromise the entire strategy. Beechwood Lane had no idea what was coming. The HOA's reign of terror was about to meet its match. The technology room in Michael's house looked more like a military command center than a typical home office. 3 high-resolution monitors lined the wall, their screens displaying a complex network of information. Trail cameras, GPS tracking devices, and an array of digital surveillance equipment transformed his surgical precision into a strategic reconnaissance mission. Michael had learned long ago that information was the most powerful surgical instrument. In the emergency room, knowing every detail could mean the difference between life and death. Now he was applying those same skills to a different kind of battlefield. The first trail camera went up the day after Elena's certified letter arrived. A Tacticam revealed 4G camouflaged against an old oak tree, offering crystal clear night vision and cellular connectivity. It would capture every midnight inspection, every covert movement. Sarah Thompson became his most unexpected intelligence asset. At 72, she was Beechwood Lane's living historical archive. Her living room, adorned with decades of meticulously maintained photo albums and local newspaper clippings, was a treasure trove of neighborhood secrets. "Alina's not just enforcing rules," Sarah whispered over Earl Grey tea, her voice a conspiratorial blend of wisdom and mischief. "She's settling scores." The story unfolded like a suburban soap opera. 5 years ago, Alina's husband Richard had been involved in a controversial incident with the neighborhood's previous HOA board. A proposed community center project had gone sideways, rumors of financial impropriety, undisclosed conflicts of interest. Richard's pharmaceutical company had been slated to provide sponsorship, but the deal collapsed spectacularly. "They humiliated him," Sarah explained, her bony fingers tracing a path through an old photo album. "Richard Rodriguez doesn't forget, and Alina, she fights his battles." Michael's GPS trackers told their own story. Alina's movements were methodical, almost obsessive. She would drive past his house multiple times daily, her late-model Mercedes performing slow, calculated passes. Each movement was logged, time-stamped, analyzed. Jason Martinez found the pattern fascinating. "She's building a case," he told Michael during their weekly strategy session, "but she's leaving a digital trail a mile wide." The neighborhood itself became a complex ecosystem of information. Mark Jennings, the local real estate agent, provided crucial insights over drinks at the Copper Kettle, the neighborhood's unofficial information exchange. "The Rodriguez family has always been about control," Mark confided, nursing a craft beer. "Richard's entire career is built on navigating regulatory landscapes. Alina just applies those same corporate tactics to the HOA." Michael's medical background gave him a unique perspective. He understood systems, how they could be manipulated, how small failures could cascade into catastrophic breakdowns. The HOA was no different from a complex medical system. Find the right pressure point, and the entire structure could be made to collapse. The trail cameras captured something unexpected one crisp autumn night. Alina's midnight reconnaissance wasn't just about Michael's property. She was documenting everything, measuring fence heights, photographing landscaping, creating a comprehensive violation database for multiple properties. "She's collecting leverage," Jason concluded after reviewing the footage. "Classic corporate strategy. Create a system where everyone is potentially vulnerable." Michael's network expanded. A retired police detective living 2 doors down, a local journalist who had previously investigated HOA overreach. Each conversation, each piece of intelligence, added another layer to their understanding. The GPS data revealed something else. Alina's routes weren't random. They followed a precise pattern, crossing multiple properties, always returning to a specific route that suggested systematic surveillance. "This isn't about rules," Michael told Jason. "This is about power. Complete, unquestioned control." As autumn leaves began to fall, painting Beechwood Lane in hues of gold and crimson, a war was brewing, not with weapons, but with information, not with violence, but with a precise, surgical dismantling of an oppressive system. Beechwood Lane had no idea what was coming. Michael Rise was preparing his most complex operation yet, and failure was not an option. The conference room at Martinez and Associates looked more like a war room than a legal office. Maps of Beechwood Lane covered one wall, annotated with color-coded pins and intricate notes. Red pins marked Alina Rodriguez's known surveillance routes. Blue pins indicated potential HOA violations across the neighborhood. Yellow pins represented strategic allies. Jason Martinez spread a massive binder across the conference table, a comprehensive dossier that would make intelligence agencies proud. "We're not just defending," he told Michael, his voice a calculated blend of legal precision and strategic determination. "We're going on the offensive." The evidence was damning. Alina Rodriguez had been playing a dangerous game, and now her own tactics would be her undoing. Violation 1. Property landscaping. The Rodriguez property's front yard exceeded the HOA-mandated maximum grass height by nearly 3 inches. Photographic evidence, time-stamped and geotagged, showed meticulously documented infractions. Each blade of grass was a potential legal weapon. Violation 2. Exterior paint discrepancies. The house's exterior paint deviated from the approved color palette by no less than 4 distinct shades. Jason had commissioned a professional color matching analysis that would stand up to the most stringent HOA scrutiny. Violation 3. Fence specification violations. The backyard fence failed to meet multiple HOA regulations. Slightly too tall in some sections, improperly maintained in others. It was a regulatory minefield waiting to explode. She's been so focused on controlling everyone else, Michael observed, his surgeon's eyes analyzing each detail. She forgot to cover her own tracks. Richard Rodriguez's corporate background added another layer of complexity. His pharmaceutical company had multiple pending investigations, minor infractions that could become major liabilities if brought to light. Jason had a contact at the local business regulatory board who owed him a favor. The strategy was multi-layered. They would not just defend against the hot tub violations, but create a comprehensive counterattack that would make Alina's position untenable. Sarah Thompson provided the final piece of intelligence. During one of their clandestine meetings, she revealed a crucial detail about the HOA's recent financial records. There were discrepancies, minor but significant, in how community funds were being allocated. "Follow the money," she said, her eyes sharp behind vintage cat eye glasses. "There's always a story in the numbers." Michael's medical background proved unexpectedly valuable. He understood systems, how small irregularities could indicate larger structural problems. The HOA's financial records were like a patient's medical chart, each line item a potential symptom of a larger issue. Jason brought in a forensic accountant, a woman named Rebecca Chen, whose reputation for finding financial irregularities was legendary. She began a deep dive into the HOA's financial records, her fingers dancing across spreadsheets with the same precision Michael used during complex surgeries. The neighborhood itself became a chessboard. Mark Jennings, the local real estate agent, began subtly spreading word about the potential regulatory issues, not as gossip, but as professional concern. Property values could be impacted by an HOA with questionable governance. "We're not just fighting a battle," Jason explained during one late-night strategy session. "We're conducting a comprehensive audit of power." Michael understood. In the emergency room, he learned that the most dangerous moments often came not from dramatic confrontations, but from systematic exposures. A small infection could bring down an entire system if left unchecked. Their goal was not destruction. It was accountability. A restoration of balance to a system that had become corrupt, controlled by fear and micromanagement. As winter began to settle over Beechwood Lane, the pieces were moving into place. Alina Rodriguez had no idea that the very system she used to control others was about to become her greatest vulnerability. The counterattack was ready, and it would be surgical in its precision. The Oakwood Community Center had never seen anything like it. What was supposed to be a routine monthly HOA meeting had transformed into a suburban showdown that would be whispered about for years to come. People arrived early, claiming seats like territorial animals. The parking lot filled with a mix of luxury SUVs and practical sedans, each vehicle a statement of the neighborhood's complex social ecosystem. Martha Henderson, who lived on Beechwood Lane for 32 years, arrived with her famous homemade lemon bars, a peace offering and a distraction technique she perfected over decades of neighborhood politics. Alina Rodriguez arrived precisely at 7:00 p.m., her outfit a carefully curated armor of muted navy power suit and pearl earrings. She moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone who believed the outcome was already determined. Behind her, Richard Rodriguez followed, a supporting actor in his wife's grand performance. Michael and Jason sat near the back, a strategic position that allowed them a full view of the room. Michael wore his surgical scrubs, a deliberate choice that spoke of professional credibility and an unspoken challenge to the bureaucratic formality of the HOA. Jason leaned close, whispering, "Remember, this isn't just about winning. This is about exposing the system." The hearing began with Alina's standard opening, 15 minutes of HOA regulations, delivered with the precision of a corporate presentation. She outlined multiple violations, her laser pointer dancing across a meticulously prepared slideshow. Michael's hot tub was presented as the primary offender, a symbol of neighborhood disorder. But Jason was prepared. When Alina finished, Jason took the floor. His first move was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of defending Michael, he went on the offensive. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Beechwood Lane HOA," Jason began, his voice carrying the weight of legal authority, "we're here to discuss more than one hot tub. We're here to discuss systemic violations that have been overlooked for years." The room went silent. Jason's presentation was a masterpiece of legal strategy. One by one, he exposed violations committed by HOA board members and prominent neighborhood residents. Alina's own property violations were meticulously documented: fence heights, paint colors, landscaping infractions. Each slide was a surgical strike, removing the veneer of Alina's authority. Rebecca Chen, the forensic accountant, presented the financial irregularities, subtle discrepancies in HOA fund allocations, questionable expense reports, money that couldn't be fully accounted for. Richard Rodriguez began to sweat. The room was a powder keg of suburban tension. Long-simmering resentments bubbled to the surface. Neighbors who had quietly chafed under Alina's strict interpretations of HOA rules found their voices. George Patterson, a retired Marine, stood up. "This isn't about a hot tub," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of years of military discipline. "This is about personal freedom, about our right to exist in our own homes without constant harassment." Applause erupted. Michael remained calm, watching the scene unfold. This was a different kind of surgery, not with scalpels, but with truth. Each revelation was a precise incision into the body of neighborhood power structures. Alina's composure began to crack. Her carefully prepared narrative was unraveling. The room that had once been her personal domain was slipping away. Jason's final move was devastating. He produced documents showing a pattern of selective enforcement. Violations overlooked for some residents, aggressively pursued for others. The HOA wasn't about maintaining community standards. It was about control. As the hearing continued, it became clear this was no longer about Michael's hot tub. This was a referendum on power, on community, on the very nature of suburban governance. The battle for Beechwood Lane had begun. The morning after the hearing, Beechwood Lane was a different place. Neighborhood dynamics shifted like tectonic plates, revealing fault lines that had long been hidden beneath a veneer of suburban politeness. Maria Gonzalez was the first to reach out to Michael, a high school physics teacher with 3 children and a perpetual look of determined exhaustion. She arrived at his doorstep with a casserole and a story of her own. 2 years ago, she said, her voice low and intense, Alina tried to force me to remove the basketball hoop my kids had in our driveway. Said it violated some obscure regulation about permanent sporting equipment. The casserole, a rich, spicy chicken enchilada, was both a peace offering and a declaration of solidarity. Michael recognized the gesture for what it was, the first wave of community support. George Patterson, the retired Marine, organized a neighborhood meeting, not an official HOA gathering, but an impromptu summit at the local park. Lawn chairs appeared from garages. Thermoses of coffee materialized. The playground became their war room. "This isn't just about one man's hot tub," George declared, his weathered hands gesturing emphatically. "This is about our right to live in our own homes without constant harassment." Jack and Elena Wu, both software engineers working for competing tech companies, brought detailed documentation. Jack had been fighting a battle with the HOA over a home office addition. Elena had documented every interaction, every email, every phone call. "We've been collecting evidence for years," Elena Wu explained, spreading out a massive binder, "but no one ever had the courage to stand up to the board." Sarah Thompson became the unofficial communications hub. Her landline, a relic most neighbors had forgotten, became a critical information network. She'd lived on the street for over 4 decades and knew everyone's history, every buried story, every unspoken conflict. Mark Jennings, the local real estate agent, saw an opportunity. The HOA's reputation was tanking, and property values could be impacted. He began subtly spreading word about the systemic issues, not as gossip, but as professional concern. The support wasn't just moral, it was tactical. Rebecca Chen, the forensic accountant, continued her deep dive into the HOA's finances. What started as a focused investigation for Michael's case had turned into a comprehensive audit. Small irregularities began to paint a larger picture of financial mismanagement. These aren't just minor discrepancies, Rebecca told Michael and Jason during a strategy session. This looks like a systematic approach to financial control. Retired professionals became Michael's secret weapons: a former corporate lawyer, a retired detective, an ex-journalist. Each brought a unique set of skills, a different perspective on fighting institutional control. The neighborhood's demographics told a story: young families, tech professionals, retired military, first-generation immigrants, people who had fought their own battles, who understood the value of standing up to arbitrary authority. Jason Martinez recognized the movement for what it was. This was no longer just a legal battle. This was a community uprising. "We've created something bigger than a hot tub dispute," he told Michael. "We've given people a voice." Unexpected alliances formed. The conservative retired couple who initially supported the HOA now questioned its methods. The young progressive family saw an opportunity to challenge institutional overreach. The immigrant families who had long felt marginalized found a platform to express their frustrations. Michael understood this better than most. In the emergency room, he'd seen how diverse groups could come together in crisis, how individual stories could create a collective narrative. As winter began to settle over Beechwood Lane, a new kind of community was taking shape. Not defined by rigid rules, but by mutual support. Not controlled by fear, but by understanding. The hot tub had become a symbol of something much larger than Michael could have ever imagined. The special HOA board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday evening, but it felt more like a tribunal. The community center's main hall buzzed with an electricity that hadn't been felt in decades. Every seat was filled with people standing in the back and lining the walls. Jason Martinez arrived with a precision that would have impressed a military strategist. Stacks of documents filled 3 briefcases, each one a potential bomb waiting to explode the carefully constructed facade of Beechwood Lane's governance. Alina Rodriguez sat at the head of the long table, her posture rigid, but the tremor in her left hand betrayed her growing anxiety. Richard sat beside her, uncharacteristically quiet, his usual corporate confidence replaced by a visible unease. Rebecca Chen took the stand first. Her forensic accounting presentation was a masterclass in systematic exposure. The financial irregularities were not just minor discrepancies. They were a carefully constructed system of misappropriation. Over the past 3 years, Rebecca began, her voice calm and methodical. There have been consistent irregularities in the HOA's financial management. Funds allocated for community maintenance have been systematically redirected. The projector displayed a series of spreadsheets, each slide revealing another layer of financial manipulation. Money meant for community infrastructure had found its way into personal accounts. Contracts had been awarded to companies with suspiciously close ties to board members. George Patterson, the retired Marine, stood up. "This isn't just about mismanagement," he declared. "This is about betrayal of trust." Michael remained silent, watching. His surgical background had taught him the power of observation, how the smallest tell could reveal the entire story. Jason's legal assault was methodical. One by one, he dismantled the HOA's credibility, the selective enforcement of rules, the financial improprieties, the systematic harassment of homeowners who didn't conform to Alina's vision of the neighborhood. Richard Rodriguez began to crack first. His corporate veneer started to chip away, revealing the vulnerability beneath. When Jason produced evidence linking some of the HOA's financial irregularities to Richard's pharmaceutical company, the room went silent. Mark Jennings, the local real estate agent, presented the financial impact. Property values were already being affected. The neighborhood's reputation was becoming toxic. What was once seen as a well-managed community was now viewed as a potential legal minefield. Maria Gonzalez shared her story. then Jack and Elena Wu, then others. A parade of homeowners revealed years of suppressed frustration. The hot tub had become a symbol of something much larger, a fight against institutional overreach. Sarah Thompson, the neighborhood's unofficial historian, provided context. She spoke of the neighborhood's evolution, of how community should be about support, not control. Her words carried the weight of decades of observation. The turning point came unexpectedly. A junior board member, Jennifer Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, stood up. "This isn't what I signed up for," she said, her voice breaking. "We were supposed to protect our community, not control it." Her statement was a dam breaking. Other board members began to peel away, distancing themselves from Elena and Richard's approach. Jason's final move was devastating. He presented a comprehensive proposal for HOA reform, term limits for board members, transparent financial reporting, clear, fair enforcement of regulations, a community-driven approach that replaced fear with collaboration. Elena's defense crumbled. Her carefully constructed world of control was dismantled not by a single blow, but by 1,000 precise cuts. As the meeting concluded, the vote was nearly unanimous. Elena and Richard would be removed from the HOA board. A new interim board would be established, with a mandate for transparency and community engagement. Michael's hot tub, the catalyst for this entire revolution, sat quietly in his backyard, a symbol of the individual's right to peaceful enjoyment of their own property. The neighborhood had changed, not through violence or dramatic confrontation, but through truth, persistence, and community solidarity. Winter settled over Beechwood Lane like a soft blanket of redemption. The neighborhood that had once been a battlefield of petty regulations and hidden tensions now hummed with a different energy, one of unexpected community and mutual understanding. Michael's hot tub became an unlikely symbol of neighborhood transformation. What had started as a personal battle against bureaucratic overreach had evolved into something far more significant. Every weekend, neighbors began to gather around its bubbling waters, a ritual of connection that would have been unimaginable months earlier. Sarah Thompson christened it the Community Cauldron during one of their first gatherings. Wrapped in thick robes and nursing mugs of mulled wine, the neighbors shared stories, not the manufactured drama of past HOA meetings, but genuine conversations about life, struggles, and hope. The new HOA board looked nothing like its predecessor. Jennifer Rodriguez, who had been the first to break ranks during the critical board meeting, now served as president. Her approach was revolutionary in its simplicity, transparency, fairness, and genuine community care. Financial audits became a quarterly public event. Rebecca Chen continued to consult, ensuring complete transparency. The neighborhood's financial records were now available to anyone who wanted to review them. What was once a closed system became an open book. Richard and Elena Rodriguez moved away 3 months after the hearing. The pharmaceutical company Richard worked for had begun its own internal investigation, triggered by the revelations during the HOA proceedings. Their departure was quiet, almost subdued, a far cry from their previous commanding presence. Mark Jennings noticed an interesting trend. Property values, which had been stagnating under the previous HOA regime, began to climb. Young families, tech professionals, and first-generation immigrants saw Beechwood Lane as a community, not just a collection of regulated properties. George Patterson started a neighborhood watch program that was more about community support than surveillance. Movie nights, block parties, and shared community projects replaced the previous atmosphere of suspicion and control. Michael found himself at the center of this transformation, somewhat reluctantly. His emergency room skills translated surprisingly well to community building. He understood how to bring people together, how to heal systemic wounds. Jason Martinez continued to consult with other neighborhoods facing similar challenges. The Beechwood Lane model became a case study in community governance reform. Law schools began to use their story as an example of grassroots resistance and systemic change. Maria Gonzalez's children could now play basketball in the driveway. The Wu family's home office addition was no longer a source of contention. Small freedoms that had been fought for became the new normal. During one particularly memorable gathering in Michael's backyard, Jason raised a toast. "To the hot tub that started a revolution," he said, glasses clinking. That irony was not lost on anyone. A simple desire to enjoy a personal relaxation space had become a catalyst for fundamental community change. Michael's surgical precision, his ability to diagnose and treat systemic issues, had healed more than just individual patients. He had helped heal an entire community. As spring approached, the neighborhood looked different. Gardens were more vibrant. Conversations were more open. Children played more freely. The rigid lines that had once divided neighbors had blurred, replaced by genuine connections. Sarah Thompson, watching from her front porch, smiled. She had seen neighborhoods come and go, rise and fall. But this was something special. Michael looked at his hot tub, steam rising into the cool evening air. What had once been a point of contention was now a symbol of community resilience, not through confrontation, but through understanding, not through power, but through connection. Beechwood Lane had found its true self, not in rigid rules, but in the simple act of coming together.